Stand still, you pathetic maid. Don't ruin my floor with your shaking. Trevor Ashford yanked Lena Whitfield back by the shoulder as the clippers snarled inches from her scalp in the Ashford living room. Hair slid down her uniform and scattered across the marble he'd just ordered her to polish. Hands down, chin up, he barked, circling her with his phone raised, savoring the angle. This is what you're paid for. Quiet and obedient. The cold teeth scraped her skin. Lena kept her breath shallow, eyes forward, knowing one flinch would make him press harder. Footsteps and laughter closed in from the hallway, his parents arriving to watch. Trevor didn't know the room had been listening to him for years. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The morning sun streamed through the wall of windows in the Ashford estate's grand living room, casting prisms from the crystal vases Lena Whitfield carefully dusted. Her movements were precise, practiced from years of handling precious things that weren't hers. The living room was their showpiece, all marble floors, designer furniture, and floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking manicured gardens. Trevor Ashford sprawled across an ivory leather sofa that cost more than Lena's yearly salary, drink in hand despite the early hour. 3 of his equally privileged friends lounged nearby, their laughter echoing off the high ceilings as they swapped stories about their latest vacations and acquisitions. "Watch this," Trevor called out, his words slightly slurred as he grabbed his phone from the coffee table. "Hey, Maid, come here a second." Lena's hand stilled on the crystal. She'd learned long ago that ignoring him only made things worse. Carefully setting down the cleaning cloth, she turned toward him with a neutral expression that had taken years to perfect. "Yes, Mr. Ashford?" Trevor stood unsteadily, positioning himself between Lena and the arched hallway that led to the kitchen, her only exit. His friends snickered, already recording with their phones. They'd seen this kind of entertainment before. "Your hair is looking pretty wild today," Trevor said, reaching behind the bar to grab something. "All those crazy curls everywhere. Don't you think it needs some maintenance?" The electric clippers buzzed to life in his hand. Lena's stomach dropped, but she kept her face carefully blank. She'd survived worse by staying still, by letting the moment pass. Fighting back only fed their appetite for cruelty. "Such exotic hair," Trevor continued, waving the clippers closer to her head while his friends laughed. "But so unprofessional. Let me help you clean it up a bit." The first touch of the clippers against her scalp made her flinch. Trevor's grip on her shoulder tightened, holding her in place as he carved an uneven path through her hair. Dark curls fell onto the pristine marble floor, like dead things. "Look at that!" Trevor exclaimed to his audience. "Much better already. More civilized." Lena's tongue filled with the metallic taste of blood, where she bit down to keep from making a sound. She fixed her gaze on a point just past Trevor's shoulder, refusing to watch her reflection in the wall of windows as he continued hacking away at her hair. The humiliation burned under her skin, but she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of tears. "Aw, she's not even crying," one of Trevor's friends called out. "Maybe she likes her new look." "This is going viral," another one laughed, adjusting his camera angle. "The stoic Maid makeover." Trevor made increasingly erratic passes with the clippers, deliberately leaving patches and uneven spots. "We should do this every month," he declared. "Regular maintenance, right guys? Keep things under control?" Lena's scalp stung where the clippers had nicked her skin. The floor around her feet was littered with her dignity. Dark curls scattered across imported marble like casualties of war. This wasn't the first time Trevor had humiliated her for sport. There had been accidents, with drinks poured down her uniform, racial jokes that cut like knives, even a shove down the last few stairs that had left her limping for weeks. But this was different. This was him marking his territory, showing his power in the most visible way possible. "Almost done," Trevor announced, making one final pass across her head. "Just evening things out. Can't have our help looking unkempt, can we?" The clippers continued their angry buzz, a sound that would haunt her dreams. But Lena remained still, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, her breathing carefully measured. She was a statue, a prop in their theater of cruelty. She'd learned long ago that reaction was what they craved. Her pain was their entertainment. "Man, she really is like a robot," one of the friends commented, zooming in with his phone. "Most people would be freaking out by now." "That's why we keep her around," Trevor replied, brushing hair off her shoulders with mock gentleness. "She knows her place. Don't you?" Lena said nothing. Her silence was her shield, her stillness her armor. Let them mistake her quiet for submission. Let them confuse her patience for weakness. They didn't need to know about the cameras hidden throughout the house, recording every casual cruelty, every racist joke, every moment of entitled abuse. They didn't need to know that her real hair was already safely hidden beneath a high-quality wig, a precaution she'd taken weeks ago when she noticed Trevor eyeing her hair with growing malice. "Come on, say thank you for your free haircut," Trevor taunted, turning her face toward his phone camera. "Show some gratitude." Before Lena could respond, footsteps echoed from the corridor. Heavy, unhurried steps that could only belong to the masters of the house. The living room doors began to open, and for a brief moment, hope flickered in Lena's chest. Surely even the Ashfords wouldn't approve of their son destroying their employee's appearance. Surely there would be consequences for this public humiliation. The doors swung wide, and Robert Ashford appeared with his wife just steps behind. They paused in the doorway, taking in the scene before them. Their son with clippers in hand, their maid standing amid scattered curls, the phones recording everything. Robert and Elaine Ashford stood framed in the doorway, a portrait of wealth and privilege fresh from their charity luncheon. Robert's tailored suit probably cost more than Lena's yearly salary, while Elaine's designer dress whispered of old money and careful breeding. They paused, taking in the scene before them, their son wielding electric clippers, their maid standing amid scattered dark curls on imported marble, phones recording everything. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. 4, 5. Then Elaine laughed, the sound like crystal breaking. "Oh my," she said, pressing manicured fingers to her throat. "Trevor, darling, what are you doing?" "Just giving the help a makeover, Mother," Trevor replied, grinning as he waved the still buzzing clippers. Her hair was getting pretty unruly. Robert's lips twitched. "Well, son, if you're going to play barber, at least do it properly. You've left it rather uneven." Lena stood perfectly still, her eyes meeting Robert's, then Elaine's, searching their faces for any sign of disapproval, any hint that this crossed a line. She'd worked in their home for years, served their meals, cleaned their spaces, kept their secrets. Surely there were limits to what they would allow. But Elaine just waved a dismissive hand. "It's just hair, dear," she said to Lena, as if discussing a broken glass or stained tablecloth. "It'll grow back eventually. Though perhaps this is better, more manageable." Trevor's friends snickered, their phones still recording. One of them zoomed in on Lena's face, hunting for tears that wouldn't come. "Here, let me finish the job," Trevor announced, moving behind Lena again. The clippers resumed their angry buzz. "Can't leave my work half done, can I?" "Just mind the carpet," Elaine cautioned, more concerned about loose hair on the floor than the woman being forcibly shaved. "We have the charity board meeting here tomorrow." Trevor made a show of it, playing to his audience as he removed the last of Lena's hair. He carved deliberate patterns, leaving patches, then fixing them by taking everything down to the skin. When he finished, he stepped back and bowed theatrically. Ladies and gentlemen, I present my masterpiece. He gestured at Lena like a magician revealing his trick. Much more professional now, wouldn't you say? Robert checked his watch, already bored with the entertainment. Remember your NDA, Lena, he said, his tone casual but carrying steel beneath. I trust this won't become an issue? Lena's voice emerged steady, practiced. No, sir. No issue. Good girl, Elaine said, as if praising a well-trained pet. She opened her designer handbag and pulled out a silk scarf. Here, you can use this to cover up until it grows back. It's last season anyway. She held out the scarf with 2 fingers, like feeding a dangerous animal. Lena accepted the scarf without comment, wrapping it around her head with movements that betrayed no trembling, no rage, no hurt. Her hands remained steady as she retrieved the broom and dustpan from the utility closet. Trevor and his friends sprawled back on the sofa, reviewing their footage and laughing at particularly good moments. They picked favorite shots to share in their private group chat, adding cruel captions and emoji reactions. I'm thinking about getting into hairstyling, Trevor joked, making scissoring motions with his fingers. What do you guys think? Found my calling? Total natural, bro, one friend replied, showing Trevor a particularly humiliating angle he'd captured. This is gold. Robert straightened his already perfect tie. Well, if the morning's entertainment is finished, shall we have breakfast? The chef mentioned something about quiche. Perfect timing, Elaine agreed. I'm famished after that dreadful charity luncheon. All those speeches about poverty and education reform, so depressing. Lena, once you're finished cleaning up your mess, we'll need coffee service in the breakfast room. Yes, ma'am, Lena replied, carefully sweeping dark curls from the marble floor. Each stroke of the broom was measured, methodical. She gathered her shorn hair like fallen soldiers, evidence of another casual battle lost in this pristine war zone. The Ashfords moved toward the breakfast room, their voices carrying back through the open doors. Did you see Margaret's face when I announced our donation? Elaine was saying. 10 million to the Children's Hospital. And she could barely manage to clap. Pure jealousy. Speaking of donations, Robert added, Trevor, remember we have that foundation photo shoot next week. Try not to get too wild at Jason's party this weekend. We need you looking presentable. Don't worry, Dad, Trevor called back. I'll be on my best behavior. He winked at his friends, who erupted in fresh laughter. The friends finally tired of their game, pocketing phones and gathering designer jackets. They had brunches to attend, shopping to do, other entertainments to seek. They stepped around Lena as if she were furniture, tracking hair clippings across the floor she'd just cleaned. Same time next month, one joked to Trevor on their way out. My sister's stylist charges a fortune. Maybe I should just come here instead. Anything for my friends, Trevor replied grandly. We provide full service here at Casa Ashford. Lena continued her work, emptying the dustpan, wiping down surfaces, erasing all evidence of the morning's entertainment. The silk scarf felt like a brand against her skin, a badge of their ownership. But her movements remained precise, her face composed. She served coffee in the breakfast room with steady hands, poured juice without spilling a drop, endured Trevor's smirking glances across the table. Hours later, as the sun settled into dusk, Lena stood alone in her small room above the garage. The space was sparse, but meticulously clean. A single bed, a dresser, a narrow window overlooking the manicured grounds. She removed her uniform with the same care she always did, hanging it precisely in the closet. The silk scarf came off last, folded with deliberate motions despite its tainted origins. Lena closed her bedroom door, turning both locks with practiced precision. The small room behind the estate's service wing wasn't much, but it was her space, the only place she could truly breathe. Through the thin walls, she could hear the distant sounds of the Ashfords' evening entertainment, Crystal glasses clinking, fake laughter, the constant performance of wealth. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed, fingers tracing the silk scarf Elaine had tossed at her like table scraps. Such a casual gesture of contempt. Here's a worthless thing for a worthless person. The fabric probably cost more than Lena made in a week. She folded it carefully, each crease exact, and placed it in her drawer. Evidence, like everything else. Her hands moved to her head, finding the edges of the wig they'd left intact. The expensive human hairpiece had been her protection, her foresight. Slowly, she removed it, revealing what lay beneath. Skin already smooth, already shaved close weeks ago. She'd known this day was coming. She'd seen it in Trevor's eyes, in the escalating jokes, in the way he tested boundaries to entertain his friends. Lena got down on her knees beside the bed, reaching underneath to pull out a heavy suitcase. The combination lock clicked softly. 1492, her grandmother's birth year. Inside, organized with military precision, lay rows of external hard drives. Each was labeled meticulously. Kitchen, South Wing, Jan 2023, Master Study, March 2023, Wine Cellar, April 2023. Years of footage, hundreds of hours of casual cruelty and corruption, all categorized and backed up. She hadn't started recording out of a desire for revenge. No, it had been pure survival instinct. The first time she'd heard Robert Ashford discussing illegal stock manipulation in his study, she'd understood the power of documentation. When Elaine had accidentally spilled hot coffee on her predecessor, laughing it off as clumsiness, Lena had learned the value of video evidence. The cameras were smaller now, easier to hide. Technology had evolved, but the Ashfords' behavior hadn't. Taking out her laptop, Lena connected the newest drive. The living room footage uploaded smoothly to her encrypted cloud storage. She labeled it Trigger Event and added it to multiple backup locations. No single point of failure. That was crucial. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, typing detailed notes into a password-protected document. Date, September 15th, 2023. Time, approximately 10:15. M location, main living room, East Wing. Present, Trevor Ashford, Robert Ashford, Elaine Ashford. Witnesses, Jason Mitchell, Kevin Ross, Sarah Whitman, Trevor's friends. Incident, forced head shaving. Recording devices, living room cameras 2 and 4. Trevor's phone, witness phones. Physical evidence, silk scarf, Hermes Spring Collection, given by EA. Notable quotes. She typed them word for word, each casual cruelty preserved in text. Through her window, she could hear more laughter floating up from the main house. A car engine started, probably Trevor's friends leaving for their next entertainment. The sound of expensive tires on gravel. Then, silence. Lena closed her eyes, centering herself through the breathing exercises she'd learned years ago. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Each breath carrying away the urge to scream, to break things, to let them see her rage. She opened a different folder on her laptop, reviewing older footage. Robert discussing offshore accounts in his study, thinking he was alone. Elaine berating and striking a groundskeeper, then having him fired when he threatened to report it. Trevor's escalating pranks that crossed into assault. Each incident documented, time-stamped, backed up. Not for revenge, for protection. For justice, when the time came. The laptop's soft blue light illuminated her face as she worked, adding keywords and cross-references to her database. She'd developed her own classification system over the years. Physical abuse, verbal abuse, financial crimes, sexual harassment, witness intimidation. The categories grew like poison ivy, twisting together into a choking vine of evidence. A notification popped up on her screen. The cloud upload was complete. She verified the backup, then started another. Redundancy was essential. One copy in the cloud, one on physical drives, one with her lawyer in a sealed envelope. The Ashfords thought wealth made them untouchable, but wealth had made them careless. They'd never imagined their quiet maid was archiving their sins. Lena touched her smooth scalp, remembering Trevor's laughter as he'd wielded the clippers. He'd wanted tears, wanted to see her break. But she'd been ready. She was always ready. That was her true strength, not in resistance, but in preparation, in patience, in the quiet power of documentation. Tomorrow, she would wake at her usual time. She would prepare their breakfast, clean their spaces, endure their jokes about her appearance. She would act normal, because normal was her camouflage. Normal was how she'd survived this long gathering evidence, like a patient spider spinning its web. She checked her phone, 11:45 p.m. Through the floor, she could feel the bass from Trevor's sound system. More parties, more witnesses, more evidence. The Ashfords lived as if consequences were things that happened to other people. They'd never learned that power doesn't disappear. It just changes hands. Lena began her nightly routine, laying out her uniform for tomorrow. Everything pressed and perfect, because perfection was her shield. They saw the surface, the compliance, the quiet efficiency. They never looked deeper, never questioned why she stayed, why she endured, never wondered what lay beneath her silence. She updated her calendar, noting appointments and cleaning schedules. Everything had to appear ordinary. That was crucial now, more than ever. No changes in routine, no hints of what she carried in her mind and in her files. Just another day of service, of careful observation, of gathering threads that would eventually become a noose. The music from the main house finally died down. Car doors slammed, engines started. Privilege departed for the night. Lena checked her locks again, then the window latches. Security was automatic now, ingrained like muscle memory. She couldn't afford mistakes, not when she carried so much dangerous truth. Moving the laptop aside, she knelt again to return the suitcase to its hiding place. The hard drives clicked against each other softly as she slid it under the bed. Each one a piece of ammunition, waiting for the right moment. Not for revenge. She was beyond something so simple. This was about accountability, about consequences finally finding those who thought themselves above them. Lena reached for her phone, setting her alarm for 5 a.m. Another day of service would begin in a few hours. Another day of watching, waiting, documenting. She closed the suitcase with a soft click, the sound like a promise. Morning sunlight streamed through the Ashford mansion's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the imported marble floors. The family gathered around their massive mahogany dining table, the surface gleaming like dark water. Silver place settings caught the light, throwing tiny reflections onto the walls. Lena moved with practiced efficiency, serving coffee in bone china cups. Her movements were precise, each step calculated. The silk scarf Elaine had given her yesterday was tied neatly around her head, hiding the evidence of Trevor's entertainment. "Lena, dear." Elaine's voice dripped with artificial sweetness. She held an envelope between manicured fingers, tapping it against the table's polished surface. "We need to discuss yesterday's unfortunate incident." Lena stood perfectly still, coffee pot steady in her hands. She'd seen this scene play out before with other staff members. The envelope, the false concern, the quiet threats wrapped in politeness. "Please, sit down." Robert gestured to an empty chair, a command masked as courtesy. He didn't look up from his Wall Street Journal. Lena settled into the chair, keeping her eyes appropriately lowered. Her hands folded in her lap, still and controlled. Trevor slouched in his seat across the table, scrolling through his phone with one hand while picking at his eggs Benedict with the other. Elaine slid the envelope across the table's polished surface. "We feel terrible about what happened." Her tone suggested anything but remorse. "We think it's best for everyone if we make some changes." Lena opened the envelope with careful movements. Inside, she found exactly what she expected. A severance check with too many zeros, hush money dressed as generosity, and a stack of legal papers. "It's a very generous settlement," Robert said, finally looking up from his paper. His eyes were cold, calculating. "And an addendum to your original non-disclosure agreement. Very standard stuff. Just to make sure there are no misunderstandings about yesterday," Elaine added, her smile tight and practiced. Trevor snorted, not bothering to look up from his phone. "Come on, it was just a makeover gone wrong. Some people can't take a joke." Lena read through the documents slowly, giving them the show they expected. Her fingers trembled slightly as she turned the pages, not from fear, but from the effort of containing her awareness of what was coming. The addendum was thorough, designed to silence her completely about everything she'd witnessed in the Ashford home. "I understand," she said softly, her voice carrying just the right note of defeat. "You've been very generous." Relief flickered across Elaine's face. Robert's shoulders relaxed slightly. They were getting exactly what they wanted. Or so they thought. Trevor finally looked up, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth as he deleted something from his phone. "We'll need you to clear out by this evening," Robert said, returning to his paper. "Henderson will help you with your things." "Of course, Mr. Ashford." Lena stood, tucking the envelope into her apron pocket. "I'll start packing after I clean up breakfast." "That's our Lena," Elaine said warmly, as if she hadn't just participated in destroying someone's livelihood. "Always so professional." Lena moved to the kitchen, gathering dishes with her usual quiet efficiency. Through the serving window, she could hear their conversation shift to weekend plans, her dismissal already forgotten. Trevor mentioned a party in the Hamptons. Elaine discussed charity board meetings. Robert made calls about stock options. In the kitchen, Lena washed dishes methodically, her movements unhurried. She memorized the cadence of their voices, the casual cruelty in their laughter, the way they spoke about people as if they were disposable. The hot water turned her hands red, but she barely noticed. Her mind was cataloging, recording, preparing. The morning passed in a blur of final tasks. She packed her room slowly, carefully, taking only what was necessary. Clothes, toiletries, a few personal items. The important things, the drives, the documents, the evidence, were already secured elsewhere. She'd been preparing for this moment for years. Trevor passed her in the hallway once, deliberately bumping her shoulder. "No hard feelings, right?" His grin was sharp, predatory. "It's just business." "No hard feelings, Mr. Trevor," Lena replied softly, her eyes down. Let him think he'd won. Let him believe in his own invincibility. By late afternoon, her small room was nearly empty. The bed was stripped, the drawers cleared, the closet bare except for a few hangers. Henderson, the house manager, supervised as she carried her 2 suitcases to the front door. His face was carefully blank. He'd seen this scene too many times before. Elaine appeared one last time, her charity smile firmly in place. "Remember, Lena, the agreement is very specific about discussing your time here." The threat was clear beneath the sugary tone. "I understand completely, Mrs. Ashford." Lena's voice was steady, compliant. "Thank you for everything." The sun was setting as she walked through the estate's gates for the final time. The envelope felt heavy in her purse, but not as heavy as the knowledge she carried. Behind her, the mansion's windows blazed with light, the Ashfords' world continuing unchanged. They thought they'd solved a problem. silenced a threat, restored their power. Lena walked slowly down the tree-lined drive, her suitcases rolling quietly on the smooth pavement. The evening air was cool against her scalp beneath the silk scarf. A car passed her, Trevor, heading out for another night of consequence-free entertainment. He didn't even glance in her direction. Lena sat in her modest room, the blue glow of her laptop screen cutting through the darkness. The space was small, but meticulously organized. A single bed, a desk, and walls bare except for a calendar marked with precise notes. Through thin curtains, streetlights cast angular shadows across the floor. Her fingers moved deliberately across the keyboard as she logged into her banking app. The Ashfords' check, their attempt at silence, was substantial. Lena photographed it carefully before making the mobile deposit, documenting every detail. Within minutes, the funds cleared. She immediately initiated a transfer to a separate account she'd set up months ago. "Let them watch that account," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let them think they can track me." The laptop hummed softly as she opened a secure email client. Her hands remained steady despite the weight of what she was about to do. Years of evidence, countless moments of casual cruelty and calculated abuse, all preserved and catalogued. She'd watched, waited, documented, and now, finally, it was time. To Dana, RuizaGlobalInvestigates.com. Subject: Not an incident. A pattern. Encrypted. Lena attached the first set of files. The living room footage from yesterday played silently on her screen as she verified the upload. Trevor with the clippers, his friends laughing, her hair falling to the marble floor. Then Elaine and Robert entering, their amusement clear, their indifference complete. The timestamp burned in the corner, undeniable. But that was just the beginning. She added more clips, each carefully selected from years of footage. Trevor mocking an elderly black gardener until the man quit. Elaine telling housekeepers they should be grateful for work, regardless of pay. Robert in his study, casually discussing how to bury discrimination lawsuits. Each video was crystal clear, dated, with perfect audio. 3 years, Lena whispered, watching the progress bar climb. 3 years of watching, waiting, surviving. Her phone buzzed, a text from her bank confirming the transfer. The Ashfords would be able to trace that movement. Let them. The real funds were elsewhere, secured long ago. She'd learned from watching Robert's financial schemes. She knew how to hide things in plain sight. The upload completed. Lena checked her backup drives, confirming multiple copies were secured in different locations. She'd planned this meticulously, knowing she'd only get one chance. If they blocked one release, others would trigger automatically. The truth would emerge, one way or another. Outside, a car alarm briefly shattered the night's quiet. Lena didn't flinch. Her focus remained on the screen, watching the encryption protocols ensure her message's security. The Ashfords thought wealth made them untouchable. They'd never considered that their power might be their weakness, that their belief in their own immunity would make them careless. Her email client pinged. Dana Ruiz had responded already. Not an incident. A pattern. This is extraordinary, but I need verification. Timestamps? Locations? Additional audio? Lena smiled slightly. This was why she'd chosen Dana. The journalist's reputation for thoroughness matched her own. She quickly sent back a detailed response. Dates, times, room numbers. Supporting audio files from different devices, proving the footage hadn't been doctored. Building blueprints showing camera positions, witness names, bank records. Her phone lit up with a news alert. Then another. And another. The first outlets were picking up fragments of the story. Social media would follow soon. The Ashfords' phones would start ringing any minute. Lena opened her calendar, checking off yesterday's date. Next to it, in her precise handwriting, trigger event. She'd known it would come, had prepared for various scenarios. Trevor's impulsiveness, his escalating cruelty, had made the shaving incident inevitable. The only question had been when. More alerts buzzed. Lena silenced her phone, but kept it visible. She wouldn't sleep tonight. She needed to monitor the information flow. The Ashfords would wake to chaos, but their first instinct would be control. They'd call lawyers, PR firms, fixers. They'd try to bury the story. But Lena had learned from every conversation she'd overheard in that house. She knew their tactics, their connections, their methods of making problems disappear. She'd designed her response accordingly. Multiple releases, staggered timing, different jurisdictions. If they blocked one source, 3 more would activate. The laptop's fan whirred as she uploaded additional files to secure servers. Each clip was labeled, categorized, cross-referenced. The Ashfords had mistaken her silence for submission, her careful work for subservience. They'd never understood that she'd been building a case, piece by piece, day by day. Dana sent another email. This is bigger than I initially thought. Corporate angles, financial implications. Give me an hour to verify key points. This will break wide. Lena checked the time. 4:47 a.m. Dawn was approaching. She rolled her shoulders, easing the tension. In the mansion, Trevor was probably just getting home from another night of consequence-free entertainment. Elaine would soon wake for her morning yoga. Robert would expect his coffee at precisely 6:30 a.m., but their routine was about to shatter. Lena refreshed her browser, watching as the first major headline appeared on a national news site. Breaking: Billionaire family accused of years of documented abuse. The timestamp read 4:58 a.m., right on schedule. The morning sun crept through Lena's window as a news anchor's voice filled her small room. Her coffee sat untouched on the bedside table, growing colder by the minute. The TV screen showed Robert Ashford standing at a podium, his expression carefully crafted into one of paternal disappointment. "These allegations are completely false," Robert declared, his voice steady and practiced. "This is nothing more than a vindictive attempt by a former employee to damage our family's reputation through manipulated footage and outright lies." Beside him, Trevor stood with an uncharacteristic meekness, his usual smirk replaced by a wounded look that had clearly been rehearsed. Elaine dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, playing the role of the distressed mother perfectly. "My son has always shown nothing but kindness to our staff," Robert continued. "While he may be spirited and occasionally misunderstood, these accusations are malicious fabrications." Lena watched as their legal team took over, a wall of expensive suits and carefully worded threats. The lead attorney, speaking with measured authority, detailed how they would pursue all legal remedies against these defamatory claims. Her phone buzzed with a message from Dana. "They're pushing hard. Stock took an early hit, but their damage control is working. Stay strong." The financial ticker at the bottom of the screen confirmed it. Ashford Industries had dropped 12 points at opening, but was already recovering. Traders were calling it a temporary setback. Lena's social media notifications had exploded overnight. She didn't need to read them. The preview snippets told her everything. Racial slurs, death threats, accusations of extortion. People she'd never met dissecting her character, questioning her motives, defending the wealthy family they wished they could be part of. She methodically screenshot each threat, forwarding them to Dana without comment. The journalist had insisted on documenting everything. Evidence of intimidation would matter later. The morning shows had already picked up the story, but not in the way Lena had hoped. "Questions are being raised about the authenticity of the footage," one host mused. "And why wait 3 years to come forward? Another host chimed in. If conditions were so bad, why stay? It doesn't add up. A notification from her banking app made Lena's breath catch. Account access temporarily restricted pending investigation. The reason cited was potential illegal surveillance activity. She'd expected this. It was why she'd moved most funds earlier. But the speed of it was still startling. Her phone rang. Dana again. They're moving fast, the journalist said without preamble, using every connection they have. I'm getting pressure from advertisers already. But we knew this would happen. The footage is authenticated, Lena replied calmly. Time-stamped. Multiple angles. They don't care about truth right now. They care about control. You should get legal representation immediately. The legal aid office was housed in a worn downtown building with flickering fluorescent lights. The waiting room smelled of old coffee and desperation. Lena sat straight-backed in an uncomfortable chair, watching others waiting for help with evictions, custody battles, restraining orders. The wheels of justice moved slowly here, unlike in the gleaming offices the Ashfords' lawyers occupied. The attorney they assigned her was young, earnest, and clearly overwhelmed. She shuffled through Lena's documents with growing concern. They're alleging criminal surveillance, she explained. The NDAs you signed specifically prohibited recording devices. Even if the content shows wrongdoing, the method of obtaining it could be problematic. I understood the risks, Lena replied quietly. The attorney leaned forward. They will use everything they have. Money, influence, connections, the system. It doesn't always work the way it should. I know exactly how the system works, Lena said. I watched it protect them for years. Through the office window, Lena noticed a black SUV parked across the street. Tinted windows, engine running. It had been there when she arrived an hour ago. My best advice right now is to stay quiet, the attorney continued. Let us work through proper channels. Don't engage with media. Don't post anything online. I haven't posted anything, Lena interrupted softly. I don't need to. The truth is already out there, spreading. They just don't know how much yet. The young lawyer looked uncertain. They're going to try to paint you as angry, unstable, vengeful. They'll dig through your past, your family, your finances. Let them, Lena said. I have nothing to hide. The meeting wrapped up with more cautionary advice and scheduled follow-ups. Outside, the afternoon had faded into dusk. The SUV was still there, its presence heavy in the growing shadows. Lena stood on the sidewalk, her shoulder bag containing folders of legal documents. The parking garage loomed ahead, its entrance a dark mouth in the dimming light. She could feel eyes on her, from the SUV, from windows, from security cameras. The weight of money and power pressing down, trying to make her small again. She took a measured breath and began walking toward the garage. Her footsteps echoed on the concrete, steady and unhurried. The darkness ahead didn't frighten her. She'd worked in the shadows of power for years, gathering evidence in the dark. Now they were learning what that darkness could hide. The parking garage swallowed Lena into its concrete depths. Fluorescent lights sputtered overhead, creating shifting shadows between the support pillars. Her footsteps echoed against the walls, mixing with the distant hum of evening traffic and the drip of water from somewhere in the darkness. Level P2 was nearly empty. Just a few scattered cars remained, their surfaces reflecting the unstable light. The air smelled of exhaust and damp cement. Lena's keys were already in her hand, held between her fingers, a habit learned long ago. Movement flickered in her peripheral vision. A shape emerged from behind a thick concrete pillar, then another. Two men in dark suits, too well dressed for this public garage. Their shoes were expensive, their watches gleaming. Not regular security guards. Ms. Whitfield, the taller one said, his voice professionally neutral. A moment of your time. Lena stopped, maintaining distance. She recognized the shorter man from Ashford corporate events, private security, the kind that handled special circumstances. Her pulse quickened, but her voice remained steady. "I'm running late," she said, taking a half step backward. "This won't take long." The taller man moved to her left, while his partner drifted right. "We're here to discuss your cooperation with certain journalists." "I have nothing to discuss." Lena shifted, keeping both men in view. Her phone was already recording in her pocket, another old habit. "Mr. Ashford is concerned about misunderstandings." The shorter man's tone hardened. "Misunderstandings can have consequences for everyone involved, including your family," the tall one added softly. "Your nephew just started college, didn't he?" "Engineering program?" Lena's fingers tightened around her keys. The mention of her family made her stomach clench, but she kept her expression neutral. "Are you threatening me?" "Threatening?" The shorter man smiled without warmth. "We're problem solvers, Ms. Whitfield. Right now, you're a problem." He moved suddenly, grabbing her arm. His fingers dug into her flesh, professional restraint abandoned. Lena reacted instantly, driving her keyed fist toward his face. He jerked back, but not before the metal scored his cheek. The taller man lunged forward. Lena twisted, ramming her elbow backward into his solar plexus. He grunted but managed to grab her jacket. She spun, using the momentum to slip free of the garment, but lost her balance. Her shoulder slammed against a car hood. Pain flared through her ribs as the shorter man seized her again, this time with both hands. The metal was cold against her back as he pressed her against the vehicle. "Just listen," he growled, blood trickling from the scratch on his face. "This can get much worse." Lena brought her knee up sharply. He doubled over, cursing. She pushed off the car, stumbling past him. The taller man reached for her, but she ducked under his arm. Her ribs screamed in protest as she ran. Footsteps pounded behind her. Lena sprinted toward the exit ramp, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The fluorescent lights strobed across her vision. She reached the next level, then the next, not daring to slow down. The footsteps gradually faded. They weren't actually trying to catch her, just scare her. Message delivered. But they didn't understand. Fear wasn't the same as surrender. Lena burst out of the garage into the evening air. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone, but her voice remained clear as she recorded. "2 men assaulted me in the parking garage at approximately 7:15 p.m. One identified from Ashford Corporate Security. Physical assault, verbal threats against family, marks on right arm from restraint, bruised ribs. They mentioned my nephew specifically." She detailed everything while it was fresh. Descriptions, exact quotes, the sequence of events. The voice memo uploaded to her secure cloud storage immediately. A copy went to Dana. Blood dripped from her scraped knuckles where the keys had cut into her own skin during the struggle. Her ribs throbbed with each breath. But as she walked quickly through the darkening streets, Lena felt a grim satisfaction beneath the pain. They'd escalated to physical intimidation, exactly as she'd predicted. Another piece of evidence, another crack in their facade of legitimacy. 3 blocks. 4. 5. No one followed. The streets grew more residential, quieter. Lena's apartment building finally came into view. Modest but secure, with cameras in the lobby. She took the stairs instead of the elevator, unwilling to be trapped in a small space. Her hands trembled slightly as she fitted the key into her door, but her movements were precise. Lock, deadbolt, security chain. Each barrier sliding into place with a solid click. Inside, Lena leaned against the wall. For the first time since the garage, she allowed herself to truly exhale. The breath shuddered out of her, carrying some of the tension with it. But not the resolve. Never that. Her phone buzzed. Dana acknowledging receipt of the voice memo. Evidence logged. Documented. Another piece of the truth they couldn't bury. Dana Ruiz sat before the Senate subcommittee, her posture straight and professional despite the early hour. The hearing room's oak panels and brass fixtures seemed to absorb the tension as cameras recorded every moment. Lena watched from her couch, body still aching from the garage attack, ice packs pressed against her ribs. On the screen, Senator Martinez leaned into her microphone. "Ms. Ruiz, please describe the evidence you've verified regarding the Ashford family's conduct." "I have independently authenticated over 200 hours of footage," Dana replied, her voice clear and measured. "The recordings document systematic abuse, racial harassment, and what appears to be criminal behavior spanning 3 years." The chamber's massive screens lit up. Trevor Ashford's face filled them, his expression twisted with casual cruelty as he cornered a housekeeper in a hallway. The audio was crisp. "Dance for me, or find somewhere else to work." Another clip, Robert Ashford in his study, laughing about keeping the help in line. More footage played, each clip more damning than the last. Lena's phone buzzed constantly. Support messages flooded in from domestic workers' rights groups, civil rights organizations, and ordinary people outraged by what they were seeing. Ashford abuse trended nationwide. "Nike suspends partnership with Ashford Enterprises," scrolled across the news ticker. Then, "Microsoft reviewing contracts. Tesla distances itself from collaboration." The stock started dropping. 5%. 10. 15. Trading halted temporarily. On a different channel, Trevor Ashford's face appeared again, this time in a recorded statement. His usual arrogance had been replaced by careful contrition. "In light of recent events, I will be taking an immediate leave of absence to reflect on my actions and seek appropriate counseling." Elaine Ashford held a press conference on the Ashford mansion's front steps. Tears streaked her expertly applied makeup as she clutched a tissue. "As a mother, I'm devastated. We clearly failed in our guidance. But these selective clips don't show the whole story. We've always treated our staff like family." Lena snorted at that last line, wincing as the movement jarred her bruised ribs. She adjusted the ice pack, watching the media circus unfold across multiple channels. For a brief, bright moment, it felt like the truth was finally breaking through. Her phone rang, Dana calling during a hearing recess. "You're watching?" Dana asked. "Every second," Lena replied. "The senators are furious. Real fury, not the performative kind. The footage of Robert discussing tax evasion particularly interested them." "Good." Lena shifted on the couch, trying to find a position that didn't hurt. "Any word from the criminal investigation?" "The FBI has—" Dana's voice cut off suddenly. Lena checked her phone. The call had dropped. She tried redialing, but it went straight to voicemail. Strange. She switched back to the hearing coverage. The tone had already started shifting. Legal experts appeared on split screens, discussing privacy violations and illegal surveillance. The word "alleged" crept back into headlines. Comment sections filled with new accounts questioning the footage's authenticity. By early afternoon, the shift was dramatic. Breaking: Judge grants emergency injunction against footage release. The ticker explained. Privacy concerns cited. Further distribution halted pending review. Lena's phone stopped buzzing. The flood of support messages dried up as if someone had turned off a tap. She tried calling Dana again. Still straight to voicemail. News anchors who had expressed outrage hours earlier now spoke about rushing to judgment and considering all perspectives. A legal analyst questioned whether unauthorized recording violated federal wiretapping laws. Another suggested the footage might be deceptively edited. Lena recognized the pattern. Money was flowing, strings were pulling, Narratives were being reshaped. The machine was adapting, like it always did. Her laptop pinged with an email alert. The subject line made her stomach clench. Urgent! Court summons! Illegal surveillance charges! The document was cold and official, demanding her appearance to answer multiple felony charges. The Ashford family's army of lawyers had been busy. They'd found their angle: attack the evidence itself, make the witness the criminal. Lena printed the summons, hands steady despite everything. The papers felt heavy, weighted with threat. She placed them carefully on her coffee table, next to the melting ice packs and her cold cup of tea. Outside her window, the sun was setting. The same media that had proclaimed justice in the morning was now questioning everything by nightfall. The Ashfords' machine was vast, patient, and practiced at crushing opposition. Her phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. Should have taken the check and stayed quiet. Lena placed her phone face down on the table. Her ribs ached. Her future teetered. But beneath the pain and uncertainty, something else burned, steady and unwavering. They thought they were forcing her into a corner. They didn't realize she'd mapped every corner long ago. The summons lay on her table, an official threat printed on expensive paper. The sun finished setting, leaving her apartment in shadows. In the distance, sirens wailed. Whether coming or going, she couldn't tell. Rain drummed against Lena's apartment windows, creating shifting shadows in the darkened room. She hadn't bothered turning on the lights. The glow from her laptop screen was enough, casting a cold blue tint across her face as she stared at her bank balance. 0.0s. They'd moved fast. Every account drained through emergency asset seizure. Her credit cards declined even for groceries. The lawyer she'd consulted wanted a $50,000 retainer. Might as well have asked for $1 million. Her phone buzzed less each day as the media circus packed up its tents and moved on to fresher scandals. A text from Dana lit up her screen. Network pulling the story. Legal threats. Advertisers pressured. I'm sorry. Lena's fingers hovered over the keyboard, remembering Dana's passionate commitment just days ago at the Senate hearing. But she couldn't blame her. The Ashfords weren't just fighting back. They were carpet-bombing every threat with money and influence. Thunder cracked outside. Lena moved to the window, watching rain sheet down the glass. She could disappear. She had distant cousins in Atlanta, friends in Chicago. Start over. Head down. Survive. It's what they expected, what they were trying to force. Instead, she walked to her bedroom closet. Behind winter coats and boxes, the metal suitcase waited. Her hands remembered the combination without thought. 7-4-1-9. The hinges creaked as she lifted the lid. Inside, organized in precise rows, lay the final archive. Not the warning shots she'd released before, but the knockout punch she'd spent years building. She lifted out the first drive, labeled in her neat handwriting, Offshore Accounts, Cayman, Swiss, Singapore. Next came board meeting audio, bribery discussions. Then, security footage, unedited, all properties. The laptop hummed as she plugged in each drive. Folders populated the screen, each meticulously organized. She opened a video file at random. Robert Ashford's voice filled the room. Don't care how you hide it, just get it done. The SEC won't find... She closed it. There would be time for that tomorrow. Rain pelted harder against the windows as Lena accessed her Dead Man Switch program. She'd built it carefully, with help from an activist programmer she'd met through domestic workers' rights groups. The interface was simple. If she didn't enter a code every 24 hours, everything would release automatically to... She'd planned this for years, knowing there would be only one real chance. The first release was a warning shot. This was the kill shot. Lena's fingers moved across the keyboard, setting up the timing sequences. Each file had its own distribution list, carefully chosen for maximum impact. The corporate crime evidence would go to financial reporters, the racist abuse footage to civil rights organizations, the bribery audio straight to federal prosecutors. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Dana. They're trying to kill the whole investigation. Network executives in closed-door meetings. Lena didn't reply. Instead, she opened her email and typed a single line to Dana's personal address. Tomorrow changes everything. The rain's rhythm shifted, becoming softer. Lena checked each triggered release one final time. The program was elegant in its simplicity. Miss the daily code entry, and everything launches automatically. No way to stop it. No way to trace it back. If they arrested her, it would only guarantee the release. She thought about Trevor's laughing face as he'd shaved her head, about Elaine's crocodile tears on television, about Robert's warnings and threats, about the bruises still healing on her ribs from their hired thugs. The laptop screen showed one final prompt. Activate Dead Man's Switch, YN. Lena's finger pressed Y without hesitation. A timer appeared. 24 Warshwanazer, 23 to 59, 59, 23, 59, 58. She stood up slowly, muscles stiff from sitting too long. The apartment was cold. She hadn't been able to pay the heating bill, but she barely noticed. Tomorrow would bring either victory or destruction. Either way, there would be no turning back. Walking to her bed, Lena lay down fully dressed, not bothering with the covers. Her work clothes for tomorrow were already laid out. Simple black pants, white blouse, comfortable shoes. The same outfit she'd worn countless times in their house, invisible until they made her visible in the worst way. The rain continued its gentle percussion against the windows. In the darkness, the laptop's glow showed the timer counting down. 23, 45, 21. 23.45, 20. 23.45, 19. Lena stared at the ceiling, hands folded across her stomach. She felt no anxiety, no fear, just a deep, quiet certainty. They'd thought her powerless. They'd mistaken patience for weakness. They'd assumed their money could bury anything. Tomorrow would prove them wrong. The timer ticked down in the darkness. 23:30, 45. 23:30, 44. 23:30, 43. Morning sunlight glinted off the Ashford Estates wrought iron gates as 3 black SUVs rolled up the circular driveway. Inside the mansion, Robert Ashford was midway through his morning coffee when his security chief burst into the breakfast room. "Federal agents, sir. Multiple agencies." Robert's coffee cup clattered against fine china. "What?" The doorbell rang, echoing through marble halls. Before anyone could move, phones throughout the house started buzzing with news alerts. Elaine grabbed her tablet, face draining of color as she scrolled. "Oh, God, Robert. It's everywhere. Everything." The doorbell rang again, more insistent. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, they could see dark-suited figures positioning themselves around the property's perimeter. In her modest apartment across town, Lena sat cross-legged on her couch, multiple news channels playing on her laptop. She'd entered the Dead Man's Switch code last night, letting everything release at precisely 9 a.m. Now, at 9:07, the world was catching fire. CNBC's ticker screamed, "Breaking! Ashford Enterprises halts trading amid massive fraud allegations." CNN, "Leaked files show systemic abuse, criminal conduct at billion-dollar empire." BBC, "Global investigation launches into Ashford Financial Network." On Fox Business, a red-faced anchor jabbed his finger at the camera. "These documents show offshore accounts in 12 countries, ladies and gentlemen. 12! The SEC is— Hold on, we're getting live footage from the Ashford estate." Helicopter shots showed federal agents streaming through the mansion's front doors. Robert Ashford appeared in the doorway, hands raised. The image quality was sharp enough to see him mouthing something to his wife before agents separated them. Lena switched tabs to a live stream from the estate's service entrance. Trevor Ashford was trying to escape through the garage, still wearing silk pajamas. He made it 3 steps before agents surrounded him. "Don't touch me!" His scream was crystal clear on the video. "Do you know who I am? Do you know who my father is?" The agents didn't respond, efficiently securing his wrists behind his back. Trevor thrashed, spitting obscenities. His designer slippers fell off as they led him to a waiting vehicle. Back in the main driveway, Elaine Ashford's knees buckled as an agent read her rights. Another agent caught her before she hit the ground. The same cameras that had lovingly captured her at charity galas now recorded her mascara-streaked face as she was helped into a federal car. Lena's phone buzzed with messages from journalists, but she ignored them. She kept her eyes on the screens, watching justice unfold in real time. Years of documentation, thousands of hours of footage, countless moments of abuse and criminality. All of it now impossible to deny or bury. A financial news anchor was speed-reading from the leaked documents. Evidence of systematic tax evasion exceeding $400 million. Board meeting recordings explicitly discussing bribery of foreign officials. Internal emails ordering the destruction of evidence. She switched channels. Civil rights violations spanning decades. The footage shows a pattern of racist abuse that legal experts say constitutes another channel. Multiple whistleblowers now coming forward, describing a culture of intimidation and violence. The surveillance footage confirms Lena's phone rang. "Dana, they're scrambling to delete files," the journalist said without preamble. But it's too late. Every major newsroom has complete copies. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit just officially confirmed they've opened a major investigation. Homeland Security is involved because of the international money transfers. "Robert's lawyers?" Lena asked. "Jumping ship. 3 firms have already publicly withdrawn representation. They're seeing the same evidence we are. This isn't a gray area. It's over." On screen, Robert Ashford was being led from the mansion in handcuffs, his usual commanding presence deflated. A federal prosecutor was giving a statement to the gathered press. "Denied bail due to flight risk and the global scale of the alleged crimes. We expect additional charges to be filed hourly as we process the evidence." The magnitude of what we're uncovering here is unprecedented. Lena switched to a business channel where analysts were charting the collapse in real time. "Ashford Enterprises stock is in free fall," a commentator announced. "Trading has been halted, but the damage to subsidiary companies and partner firms is already catastrophic. We're seeing a ripple effect across—" Her phone buzzed again. "Dana." "Lena!" The journalist's voice was thick with emotion. "It's done. Really done. They're not walking away from this. Not this time." Lena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of years lift from her shoulders. But there was no relief in her exhale. Only steel-hard resolve. This wasn't an ending. This was the beginning of real change. Through her apartment walls, she could hear her neighbors' televisions all tuned to the same news. Helicopters circled downtown, tracking the convoy of federal vehicles. Her phone continued buzzing with messages from reporters, lawyers, activists. On her laptop screen, Trevor Ashford's booking photo appeared. Hair disheveled, eyes wild, designer pajamas wrinkled. The same entitled sneer he'd worn while shaving her head was gone, replaced by something closer to fear. The news ticker below his photo scrolled endlessly. "Developing, developing, developing." Lena's apartment hummed with electronic voices as every screen blazed with breaking news. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago, forgotten as she watched history unfold through the lens of dozen different networks. The morning's federal raid was just the beginning. Breaking news from Chicago. a reporter announced breathlessly. FBI agents have just entered Ashford Enterprises' Midwest headquarters. She switched channels. Texas authorities moving on 3 separate Ashford subsidiaries, another anchor reported. The scope of these simultaneous raids suggests coordination at the highest levels. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications. Social media had transformed overnight. The same accounts that had flooded her mentions with racial slurs were now sharing her story with hashtags like Chaf Justice for Lena and Tatras Ashford Crimes. The living room footage played on endless loop, slowed down and analyzed like evidence from a crime scene. "If we pause here," a commentator said, drawing a red circle around Trevor Ashford's laughing face, "you can see the complete lack of empathy. And here," the frame advanced to show Robert and Elaine entering. "Watch their immediate reaction. No shock, no intervention. They've normalized this behavior." Lena muted the TV as her phone rang again. "Dana, how are you holding up?" the journalist asked. "I'm fine." Lena moved to her window, peeking through the blinds at the street below. An unfamiliar black sedan crawled past, windows tinted. "But I'm being watched. That's why I'm calling." "Stay inside. We don't know how many people they have on payroll, and cornered animals are dangerous. I've seen this before. When empires fall, they try to take witnesses down with them." "I expected that." Lena's voice was steady. "That's why I saved the garage footage for the final drop." On her laptop, a news alert popped up. "Breaking! Security footage. Shows Ashford-linked operatives assaulting whistleblower." The grainy parking garage video played, showing the 2 men emerging from shadows. The camera angle caught everything: the grab, the slam against the car, Lena's desperate fight back. Her escape took on new meaning with context. "The timing was perfect," Dana said. "They can't claim it was a random attack now. Not with the timestamp showing it happened right after you went public." Lena nodded, though Dana couldn't see her. "I knew they'd try something physical. They always do. But I needed it documented." Her TV suddenly blared as the mute canceled itself for breaking news. "This just in. Federal prosecutors have announced additional charges against Trevor Ashford, specifically related to civil rights violations and—" The sound cut off as Lena found the remote. She didn't need to hear it. She'd lived it. Her email inbox overflowed. Civil rights organizations offered support. Law firms proposed representation. Journalists begged for interviews. One message stood out, from the head of Domestic Workers Union. "You've exposed what so many suffer in silence. When you're ready to tell your story, we're here." Dana's voice brought her back. "I'm sending over a security detail. Professional team, fully vetted. They'll be there within the hour." "I don't need—" "Yes, you do. The Ashfords still have money hidden away. They have friends in dark places. Until every account is frozen and every conspirator is identified, you're at risk." Another news alert. Ashford Enterprise board members resign en masse as stock remains frozen. Lena moved to her kitchen, forcing herself to eat something. Her hands were steady as she made a sandwich, but her shoulders ached with tension. Through her window, she spotted another slow-moving car. Different model, same tinted windows. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You should have kept quiet." She forwarded it to Dana and 3 federal agents, adding it to her documented pattern of intimidation. The threat felt hollow now, like a reflex from a dying beast. On TV, financial analysts charted the collapse of the Ashford empire in real time. Subsidiary stocks plummeted. Partner companies rushed to distance themselves. Decades of carefully hidden corruption exposed to sunlight. Unprecedented in scale, an expert explained. The interconnected nature of these crimes means we're likely seeing only the tip of the iceberg. Each new revelation, Lena opened her laptop, beginning a final sworn statement. She typed methodically, detailing every incident, every threat, every moment of abuse. The garage assault, the head shaving. Years of racist comments delivered with casual cruelty. The statement grew longer, more detailed. This wasn't just her story anymore. It was evidence. Her phone lit up with another call from Dana. FBI wants to put you in protective custody. No. Lena's voice was firm. I'm not hiding. Lena! I've got cameras on every entrance. I've got copies of everything backed up in places they'll never find. If anything happens to me, it only proves everything I've said. Through her walls, she could hear her neighbors' TVs all tuning to the same breaking news. Another Ashford executive arrested. More warrants served. More evidence emerging. A shadow passed her window. Another car, moving slower than the others. Her phone buzzed. Dana had sent her Trevor Ashford's latest mugshot. His face was twisted with rage, but his eyes showed something new. Fear. A knock sounded at her door, sharp and official. Lena set down her phone, smoothed her shirt, and took a deep breath. She'd been waiting for this moment. Whatever it brought. She moved toward the door, each step measured and deliberate. The knock repeated, more insistent. Lena checked her security camera feed before approaching the door. 3 people waited outside, 2 wearing FBI windbreakers, 1 in a crisp charcoal suit. She opened the door slowly, keeping the security chain in place. Yes? Ms. Whitfield? The woman in the suit held up credentials. I'm Special Agent Monica Torres, FBI Civil Rights Division. This is Agent Phillips and... She gestured to the man in the suit. Nathan Brooks, from the Department of Justice's Whistleblower Protection Program. Lena studied their IDs carefully through the gap. After verifying them against the contact information Dana had provided, she closed the door, removed the chain, and reopened it fully. Please, come in. Her voice remained measured, controlled. They entered her modest apartment, taking in the multiple screens displaying news coverage, the organized stacks of documents on her dining table, the backup drives lined up precisely. Ms. Whitfield, Brooks began, setting his briefcase on the table. We have some developments to discuss. He pulled out a thick folder. First, all surveillance-related charges against you have been dropped. The judge reviewed the context and determined your actions fall firmly under whistleblower protection statutes. Lena nodded once, face unchanged. Agent Torres stepped forward. We're here to offer you formal whistleblower status and protection. This includes immediate relocation if you want it, round-the-clock security, and immunity from any potential prosecution related to the evidence gathering. The evidence was legal, Lena said quietly. I documented everything in my own living space, in areas where I was authorized to be. Yes, Brooks agreed, but the protection ensures no creative interpretations can be used against you. We've seen how the Ashford's legal team operates. Agent Phillips, who had been surveying the apartment's entry points, joined them. We're also offering you a formal role in the ongoing investigation. Your detailed records and testimony will be crucial. Lena sat at her dining table, gesturing for them to join her. The afternoon sun slanted through her blinds, creating bars of light across the documents they began laying out. There's more, Torres said, pulling out another file. The Ashford legal team reached out an hour ago. They're requesting immediate settlement negotiations. How much? Lena's voice remained steady. Brooks opened the file. The initial offer is substantial. 8 figures, plus full health care and confidentiality. Will the criminal cases proceed regardless of any private settlement? Lena interrupted. The 3 officials exchanged glances. Absolutely, Torres said firmly. This has moved far beyond civil litigation. We have evidence of systematic civil rights violations, financial crimes, witness intimidation, and conspiracy. The criminal proceedings will continue regardless of any private agreements. Only then did Lena's shoulders relax slightly. In that case, I'm willing to negotiate, with one condition. Which is? Brooks asked, pen poised. Public acknowledgement of wrongdoing. No sealed apologies, no private mea culpas. They admit what they did in open court. Torres and Phillips exchanged another look, this time with small smiles. We can make that happen, Torres said. In fact, it strengthens our position in the criminal cases. Brooks began removing more documents from his briefcase. We've prepared the initial whistleblower protection paperwork. This first set establishes your protected status and outlines the security measures being implemented. Lena read each page carefully as afternoon faded into evening. She asked precise questions about legal terminology, made careful notes, and requested specific clarifications. The officials matched her methodical pace. These documents activate your immunity protection, Brooks explained, sliding over another stack. They also establish your role as a cooperating witness and formal investigative partner. Outside, 2 unmarked federal vehicles had parked on either end of her street. Agent Phillips periodically checked in with the security teams via radio. The settlement negotiation framework, Torres said, presenting the final set of papers. Once you sign, we can begin formal talks. Everything will be overseen by federal mediators to ensure full compliance. Lena picked up her pen, the same one she'd used to document years of abuse in her hidden journals. The weight felt different now. Ms. Whitfield, Brooks said softly, you should know. This morning's evidence release has already led to 3 more whistleblowers coming forward from other Ashford properties. You've created a crack in the dam. She thought of other domestic workers, other silent witnesses. Her hand moved smoothly across each signature line, each initial box, each date field. The sun had set by the time she signed the final page. Agent Torres gathered the documents while Phillips coordinated with the security team outside. We'll have the protective detail in place within the hour, Torres said. A secure line is being installed, and we'll need to sweep for surveillance devices. I already did, Lena said, gesturing to a signal detector on her shelf. Daily, since the garage incident? Brooks smiled slightly. You think of everything, don't you? I had to. Lena stood, straightening the papers precisely. They thought that made me weak. Being careful, being thorough. They never understood it made me dangerous. Lena sat in her new apartment's living room, surrounded by reinforced windows and security systems. The TV dominated one wall, broadcasting live court proceedings that had captivated the nation. Morning sunlight filtered through bulletproof glass as she sipped her coffee, watching Trevor Ashford being led into the courtroom in handcuffs. The defendant has shown a pattern of escalating behavior, the prosecutor argued, standing before the judge. Multiple victims have now come forward with similar accounts of harassment, intimidation, and assault. Given the defendant's resources and history of witness tampering, we strongly oppose any bail consideration. Trevor's expensive suit couldn't hide his deterioration. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, his trademark smirk replaced by twitching anger. He whispered furiously to his attorney, who tried to quiet him. Your Honor, Trevor's lawyer began, my client has deep ties to the community and— The community he terrorized? A new victim's testimony played on screen. A former housekeeper described Trevor throwing hot coffee at her, then laughing. Security footage backed her account. The judge's voice cut through the courtroom. Bail denied. The defendant will remain in custody. Trevor exploded, shoving his chair back. Do you know who I am? Do you know who my father is? Remove the defendant, the judge ordered. As guards dragged Trevor out, his shouts echoed. This is all that Maid's fault! She's lying! The feed cut to Elaine Ashford's separate hearing. She sat perfectly poised, dabbing tears with a monogrammed handkerchief. "I had no idea," she insisted, voice trembling. "These were private moments I wasn't present for. I would never have allowed—" The prosecutor interrupted, playing surveillance footage from the living room. Elaine's laughter rang clear as Trevor shaved Lena's head. "And this moment, Mrs. Ashford, were you not present here?" Elaine's composure cracked. That was taken out of context. We have dozens of similar videos spanning years. Would you like to revise your statement?" In another courtroom, Robert Ashford watched his empire crumble. Board members testified about systematic corruption, describing how he buried complaints and paid off victims. His company's stock had plummeted 80% since the revelations began. Ashford Industries hereby files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, a corporate lawyer announced. Stockholders shouted from the gallery, demanding answers about their lost millions. On financial networks, analysts detailed the collapse. "Unprecedented in modern corporate history," one explained. "We're seeing a complete dissolution of the Ashford name. Universities are removing it from buildings. Charities are returning donations. Their own board is destroying them from within." Lena watched it all with steady eyes, taking careful notes. This wasn't entertainment for her. It was documentation, verification that the truth couldn't be buried anymore. Her phone buzzed with a message from Dana. "Check your email," the journalist wrote. Lena opened the attached photo. Outside the courthouse, hundreds of protesters held signs reading, "Justice for Lena," and "Domestic workers deserve dignity." Many were other household staff, speaking publicly for the first time about their own experiences. A notification popped up, another Ashford property being stripped of its name. The corporate logo disappeared from a hospital wing, a library entrance, a scholarship fund. Their legacy was being erased in real time. Her secure phone line rang, the FBI team updating her on protection protocols for tomorrow's testimony. She answered with the verified code phrase, listening as they detailed the security route to the courthouse. Between calls, Lena organized her testimony materials with the same precision she'd once used to clean crystal. Her written timeline, cross-referenced with video timestamps. Her daily logs of verbal abuse, backed by audio recordings. The medical report from the parking garage assault, matched with surveillance footage of the attackers. The TV continued its coverage. Legal experts predicted decades of imprisonment. Financial analysts calculated billions in losses. Social commentators debated the broader implications for wealth, race, and power. "This isn't just about one family," a civil rights attorney explained on screen. "This exposes how wealth can create bubbles of impunity, until someone brave enough comes along to pop them." Lena's attention shifted to a small notification. Another former employee had come forward. Then another. The crack in the dam was becoming a flood. She thought of that morning in the living room, Trevor's laughter as he held the clippers. He'd expected tears, begging, submission. Instead, he'd triggered an avalanche that buried his entire world. Outside her secured apartment, federal agents monitored the perimeter. Inside, Lena reviewed her statements one final time. Tomorrow she would speak, not as a victim, but as the architect of accountability. The TV showed Trevor being led back to his cell, Elaine crumbling under cross-examination, Robert watching his name literally being removed from the skyline. Lena reached for the remote and turned off the broadcast. She didn't need to watch anymore. The truth was playing out exactly as she'd planned, piece by careful piece, built on years of patience and precision. She gathered her testimony materials into her briefcase, each document a brick in the wall of evidence she'd constructed. Camera flashes erupted like lightning as Lena Whitfield approached the podium at the National Press Club. Her steps were measured, unhurried. She wore a tailored charcoal suit that spoke of authority rather than victimhood. Her shaved head gleamed under the harsh lights. No wig, no scarf. A deliberate choice that transformed what was meant to shame her into a symbol of defiance. The room buzzed with anticipation. Journalists from every major network jostled for position, their cameras trained on her face. In the front row, Dana Ruiz sat with her laptop open, ready to document this moment. Federal agents lined the walls, their presence both protection and testament to the gravity of the case. Lena adjusted the microphone with the same precise movements she'd once used to arrange crystal glasses in the Ashford mansion. The sound of shuffling papers and clicking cameras filled the brief silence before she spoke. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and steady. "I'm here today not to discuss what was done to me, but what has been done to many." She placed her hands flat on the podium, grounding herself. What happened in that house wasn't unique. It wasn't an incident. It was a pattern, one that repeats itself behind closed doors across this country. More cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled furiously. "Wealth creates walls," Lena continued. "Behind those walls, people with power often mistake silence for weakness. They mistake compliance for consent. They mistake documentation for surrender." She paused, letting the words settle. That was their first mistake. A murmur rippled through the crowd. In the back of the room, civil rights activists nodded in recognition. "I didn't survive through luck," she said. "I survived through observation, through patience, through understanding that sometimes the most powerful response to cruelty is to watch it, record it, and wait for the right moment to bring it into the light." She lifted a folder from the podium. "Today, I'm announcing the creation of the Whitfield Foundation for Domestic Workers and Whistleblowers. This organization will be funded by the settlement from my case, but its mission extends far beyond one family or one incident." The room grew still as she outlined the foundation's structure. Legal aid for domestic workers, security resources for whistleblowers, education programs about workers' rights. Every detail was precise, considered, thoroughly planned, just like her documentation had been. "The foundation will operate independently," she emphasized. "Its board includes labor rights experts, civil rights attorneys, and domestic workers themselves. We will provide emergency housing, legal representation, and technological resources for documentation. Because sometimes survival means having proof." A forest of hands shot up. Lena pointed to a reporter in the third row. "Ms. Whitfield, how did you endure the daily abuse without breaking?" Lena's response was immediate. "I watched. I waited. I documented." Her words fell like stones into still water. Power doesn't disappear when you expose it, but exposure changes its shape. It transforms it from something private and crushing into something public and accountable. Another reporter stood. "Did you ever consider just quitting?" "Quitting wouldn't have changed the pattern," Lena replied. "The next worker would have faced the same treatment. The one after that, too. Patterns don't break themselves. They have to be broken deliberately, methodically, with evidence that cannot be denied." She gestured to a screen behind her, where the foundation's logo appeared, a simple camera lens overlaid with the scales of justice. "This foundation isn't about revenge. It's about recognition. Recognition that domestic workers are professionals deserving of respect. Recognition that documentation is a form of power. Recognition that silence isn't always submission. Sometimes it's strategy." The questions continued, but Lena maintained her composure, answering with the same careful precision she'd used to build her case. She never named the Ashfords directly. She didn't need to. Their actions spoke louder than any accusation could. A younger reporter raised her hand. "Aren't you afraid of retaliation?" Lena's response carried throughout the hushed room. "Fear thrives in isolation. But I'm not isolated anymore. None of us are. She gestured to the domestic workers present in the audience. Every person who steps forward makes it safer for the next person to do the same. Every truth told makes it harder for lies to survive. As she concluded her prepared remarks, Lena stood straight, her presence filling the room. What happened in that house was meant to diminish me. Instead, it became the foundation for systemic change. That's not irony. That's justice. The silence that followed was profound. No cameras clicked. No pens scratched. The room held its breath, absorbing the weight of her words, the dignity of her bearing, the unshakable strength of her resolve. Then, from somewhere in the back, a single person began to clap. The sound was joined by another, then another, building like a wave. Within seconds, the entire press corps was on their feet. The applause thundered through the room, not the polite acknowledgement of a news conference, but the raw recognition of truth spoken to power, and power finally held accountable. Early morning light filtered through the windows of the Whitfield Foundation's office building. It wasn't a gleaming skyscraper like the Ashford Tower had been, just a renovated 3-story brownstone in a quiet neighborhood. But unlike that mansion of marble and secrets, every corner here held purpose. Lena's footsteps echoed softly on the hardwood floors as she made her morning rounds. The space still smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. She passed walls lined with filing cabinets, each drawer containing stories of workers who'd found protection here. Their cases weren't just papers. They were promises kept. She paused at a corkboard covered in thank you notes. Some were handwritten on scraps of paper, others formally typed, but all carried the same message. You helped us stand up. A photo showed a group of hotel workers after winning their harassment case. Another displayed domestic staff celebrating new workplace protections. Small victories that added up to real change. The Foundation's main office housed a bank of computers where staff members helped workers document their experiences securely. Lena had insisted on top-tier security systems. She knew firsthand how crucial safe documentation could be. Each station had encrypted storage and automated backup protocols. No evidence would ever be lost here. The break room, once empty, now stocked legal forms in 12 languages. Posters outlined workers' rights in clear, simple terms. A schedule on the wall listed free legal clinics and support group meetings. This wasn't just an office, it was a refuge. In her private office, Lena settled behind her desk, opening the morning's case files. The Foundation had already helped over 200 workers in its first few months. Some cases were resolved quietly, with employers backing down once they realized their actions were being recorded. Others required legal intervention. Each success strengthened their network. The morning news played softly from a small TV mounted in the corner. Lena didn't need to turn up the volume. She knew what they were reporting. Trevor Ashford's sentencing had been yesterday's biggest story. The footage showed him being led from court in handcuffs, his designer suit replaced by prison orange, his smirk finally gone. The judge had been unsparing. 15 years, no possibility of early release. Robert Ashford's fate had been even more severe. Decades in federal prison for financial crimes, civil rights violations, and conspiracy. The empire he'd built through intimidation and abuse had crumbled like a house of cards once the evidence came to light. Former board members had turned on him. Shareholders had fled. The Ashford name, once synonymous with power, now stood for corruption exposed. Elaine's plea deal meant less prison time, but her public admission of enabling abuse had destroyed her social standing. No more charity boards, no more galas, no more pretending cruelty was just a misunderstanding. The society pages that once featured her now documented her disgrace. Lena touched a hand to her head, feeling the short, soft growth of new hair under her fingers. It was barely an inch long, just beginning to cover her scalp again. The texture was different now, tighter, stronger somehow. Like her, it was growing back changed, but undiminished. She opened her laptop, reviewing overnight emails. 3 new cases needed immediate attention. A hotel maid documenting harassment, a caregiver with evidence of wage theft, a housekeeper who'd captured threats on her phone. Each one reminded her of herself, but none would have to wait years for justice. The Foundation's response team would move today. The morning sun climbed higher, warming the room. On her desk, a framed photo showed the Foundation's first graduating class of trained observers, domestic workers who now knew their rights and how to document violations safely. Next to it sat a letter from Congress requesting her testimony on expanding whistleblower protections. Change was happening, not in dramatic gestures, but in steady, relentless progress. Dana Ruiz had called yesterday, sharing news of more workers coming forward across the country. The Ashford case had broken a dam of silence. Other wealthy families were quietly settling cases, implementing reforms, desperate to avoid similar exposure. Power was learning it couldn't hide behind NDAs forever. Lena stood, gathering files for the morning meeting. Through the window, she watched early sunlight touch the city streets. Somewhere in those streets, other workers were enduring what she had endured. But now they had somewhere to turn. Now they had proof that documentation could defeat denial, that patience could outlast power, that justice could pierce any wall of wealth. She walked to her office door, each step measured and sure. The weight she'd carried for years, the fear, the rage, the careful calculation of survival, had lifted. Not because she'd forgotten, but because she'd transformed it into something stronger than vengeance. Lasting change. Lena stepped into the hallway, nodded to arriving staff members, and moved toward the morning light. She reached for her keys, their familiar weight grounding her in the present moment. With practiced calm, she locked the office door behind her and walked forward into the day, each step carrying her further from what she'd endured and closer to what she'd built from its ashes. Her shoulders were straight, her pace unhurried. She moved like someone who knew exactly who she was and what she'd overcome. No burden weighted her steps. No defeat marked her bearing. The morning sun touched her growing hair, highlighting not what had been taken, but what had been reclaimed. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.